Welcome to Content Disrupted, bold takes on brand marketing. I'm your host, Dan Baptiste, and together we'll explore what it takes to excel in brand marketing at one of the most exciting and disruptive times in industry history. Welcome to Content Disrupted. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Brett Hannath, the Chief Marketing Officer at Intel. Brett has the massive task of transforming Intel's marketing efforts during one of the most pivotal times in company history. Brett owns both the enterprise and consumer markets and is challenged with communicating how AI and cutting-edge technology drive innovation across both of those spectrums. No big deal, Brett. In this episode, we'll delve into Brett's vast experiences and what we can learn from them, explore how he's helping Intel stand out in a highly crowded, competitive AI landscape, and discuss how he's ensuring his marketing organization, a very large one, plays a pivotal role in shaping Intel's growth and future. Brett, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dan, lovely to be here. And you certainly make the job sound complex.
Am I giving you stress? Are you sweating as I'm doing?
The anxiety is building, but no, it's an awesome opportunity to be with you.
Same here. And Brett, your path is really interesting and I think important for folks to understand, the role to the seat. Can you kind of describe how you got here and a little bit of an unpredictable path here? So can you kind of describe that path for us?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And you're right. It is a bit of a weird path, but I've enjoyed every moment of it. I was a developer for 7 years, and then went from there into more front of house role, which was a pre-sales role, albeit around developer tools, with an American company called Progress Software. And then Oracle came calling. They wanted a database administrator, education consultant. And that's got nothing to do with, I know, but it had nothing to do with anything that I'd ever done before, right? And I think they just wanted someone who was technically capable, i.e. my technical background, but could learn something quickly and then educate people. And I said, yes. It was really weird though, because again, here you are being the specialist talking to an Australian bank on how to tune their Oracle databases so they don't fall over and the ATMs stop working. But it was a phenomenal opportunity. And that's how I bridged into product marketing with Oracle. So I became the product marketing rep for their database and was the newly released web products of Oracle. So that was all the .com boom. And I was the person up on stage. I really love being front of house versus in the background. So my career sort of just drifted from teaching 12 people to being at Oracle open world and promoting map indexes over across, in databases to an audience of 1,200. And I love that. And then I just sort of weaved through other marketing roles. And so my career sort of took me from the product marketing, which is all about the message and its delivery, into Intel Intel for a good 6 years. And that was about alliances marketing. As you know, Intel doesn't really sell anything direct outside a few CPUs to gaming enthusiasts. And really the success of us relies heavily on what people run on our compute architectures. And so I was out there with the Oracles, the SAPs, the VMwares, the Red Hats of the world to convince people to move off big iron like the Sun Solaris and onto Linux commodity infrastructures running blades in data centers. So that alliances marketing, partnerships, ecosystem, that was all through that experience. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I got tired of the silicon story and I wanted to move up the stack. And so I moved into another role, and that was field marketing for the Asia Pacific region for another software company called TIBCO Software. And that sort of drifted into McAfee, right? Where I was the APJ lead for marketing for McAfee across consumer and enterprise around cybersecurity. But again, I'd never touched cybersecurity before. And it's such a black arts space, or it was at the time. But they took a leap of faith in me and I took a leap of faith in my capability and jumped into cyber. And that eventually led me to the CMO role at McAfee at a time when they were determining as a corporation what they were going to be. And they eventually split into a consumer and an enterprise business under private equity. And then I became the CMO of McAfee Enterprise and then eventually came across into Intel as CMO. So it's a range of experiences, but grounded in tech because of my background.
I mean, I think it's really cool. A developer from Australia, now the global CMO of Intel. I mean, who would have thought, right?
I did it. I did it.
It's so amazing. At different points, you've juggled different, I guess, funding sources. From VC to PE, being in publicly traded companies. Can you talk about the dynamic as a leader in those companies, and both the positive, negative, like what kind of environments are set up there, and how do you need to change?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting dynamic in IT in general, like just the availability because of interest rates, the availability of cash, to change a very public company to a private one, to do reinvention of the company in private, to then potentially go public again. I think that the difference in dynamics that I loved, but was also challenging, is that as soon as you move into a private equity model, it's all about cost. Everything is about cost.
And you loved that.
Well, I mean, it teaches you rigor, right? In other words, if I spend $1, how am I going to affect the positive outcome of the business? And I had a great leader, Brian Palmer at McAfee slash Trellix, as we relaunched it to be. And he said, look, there are two ways to make $1, as in margin profitability. You either create more revenue or you slash your costs. And I think that's where marketing has a huge role to play, is help grow the company. Otherwise, you're left with no option but to reduce costs. Okay. We were just faced at the time with heavy competitive pressure. So there wasn't the freedom, if you like, to just grow it at a double-digit rate because of what was happening in cyber with the CrowdStrikes of the world, Sentinel-1s of the world. And so you're left with no other lever, right? And so that's the challenging bit. But I have to admit, coming into Intel and the public world, that has its own challenges, right? It's the various audiences that look at the performance of the company as a stock to invest in, as well as a technology to invest in. And that's where the tension is, because markets are looking at quarterly performance, whereas an IT decision maker is making a 4-year bet on a platform. All right. And that's the tension I think we feel as a public company. So there are positives and negatives on both sides, but I think there are lessons to learn on both sides. But I've enjoyed being in both worlds, put it that way.
So, if I hear you right, on the venture capital growth at all costs, there's some learnings there on how do you make marketing a growth engine. On the PE side, it's how do you kind of make it the most efficient, cost management. And then as a publicly traded company, it's kind of blending those two things together on how do you, grow in a responsible way. Do I understand that right?
No, you're completely right. And if we look at what the Intel journey is at the moment, it's a multi-year transformational journey, right? Catching up on years of underinvestment in R&D. We're very public about that. But in a silicon engineering and manufacturing to volume perspective, that takes multiple years to catch up. And we are. But it's not a quarter on quarter delivery of higher revenue that the street looks for. It is the milestones of achieving the multi-year goal that we have to, in marketing, understand to project loudly so people understand this very positive transformational journey that we're on, as opposed to the news that surrounds a quarterly outcome. All right. So I think the things that we're doing to be margin protective, and that again, we're very public about this, we have to reduce the cost of business. And those lessons that I learned in private equity of operationally, where do you save? Operationally, where can you be more efficient and effective? Are lessons that I'm grateful that I've had now because of my PE background, that I can apply with confidence that will deliver a margin outcome for the company, because marketing can save money, but still achieve what we need to at a top level.
Yeah, seemingly, if you're in a growth at all costs, like career trajectory, and you found yourself in a climate where you're having to, cut costs and manage expenses, you know, that that would be foreign, right? And really difficult. So I think it's probably difficult regardless, as you think about trying to manage headcount and skills and growth and that path forward. But I think to that point, um, love to talk about the situation you walked into because at least as an outside perspective, Intel uh, was in a really important position with as an ingredient, right? When compute was differentiated and really important, and you had the Intel Inside stamp, and that was a big differentiator. And then fast forward to when a lot of those things became commoditized. And then kind of fast forward to today, and you talked about being in this sort of reinvention mode a couple of times in your career. Can you talk about the mode you're in now at Intel, and is it similar or different to those points in your career previously?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of analogies, I think, and you captured the environment well. The analogy for me is Intel when it wanted to create a Wi-Fi enabled world, right? A couple of lessons that I took from that moment because I was in Australia, I was a business development manager at the time. And just because you have a laptop with a Wi-Fi enabled chip like system doesn't mean that there's networks available for people to connect to. So the experience could not be brought to life. Therefore, the value could not be felt by anyone, right? They weren't universally available. And so Intel realized it had to work with the ecosystem to enable the experience. But outside of the silicon, what else do we have to do? So someone can pick up a laptop, buy it, invest money, and then go connect to something, right? Because homework networks weren't a thing at the time. And so we did partnerships with Starbucks. We did it with Borders. We did it with McDonald's. We did it with, in Australia, Qantas, the airline. And we worked with Cisco to create Wi-Fi networks. And that's how that whole thing of taking your laptop down to Starbucks and doing your blog, it was all funded by Intel marketing dollars, right? And that to me was a huge lesson of how when Intel focuses not only on itself, but also on the ecosystem that delivers the value to the end user, customer, enterprise, we achieve great things, right? And I sort of, if you wind the clock forward, it's a very similar situation. So if you take AI as a science, as a capability, it's not instantly understood as to what's the value that I get out of this thing. And if we take the client AI experience, yes, we released Meteor Lake last year. We've got tens of millions of AI enabled PCs out there. And we've done a tremendous amount of engineering work to get over 500 applications using the NPU, the GPU, the CPU in an AI way. But how do we get that in the hands of the consumer so they understand when they buy this laptop, whether it's a Core Ultra Series 2 thin and light laptop with Meteor Lake or, the Meteor Lake previous gen, what do they get out of that investment? And that's what we're working on now. I think the difference is it was one experience that we were trying to promote, right? The connected experience, right? It's just, connecting a laptop to a Wi-Fi network so you can do your work. Groundbreaking. But it was a single experience that we're trying to create. This is multiple experiences. What are these experiences for a creator, for a pharmaceutical person trying to get their drugs to market more quickly, for a call center within an enterprise trying to deliver better customer experience? The AI experience in all those cases is different, right? And I think that is the challenge that we have in marketing is that AI as a thing is easy to say, but it's not easy to land, right? Um, but I love these types of Rubik's Cube problems, right? And try to be effective with the limited, restricted, spend down, expectations up environment that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really fascinating point, and in a lot of ways, kind of, we look at your career path to this point. understanding the back of the house, being a developer, being an educator, standing on stage and simplifying complex topics and talking about how to unlock the value from them. I mean, I think that's putting you in a position to really maximize your skills, your talent, your experience for this current moment because it's required, right? When I look at AI in general, there's this fatigue and excitement and unrealistic expectations. Like here we are in this moment where they're like, "Can you just AI this?" And they're like, "What does that mean?" So there's all these leaders in companies. I would say in some ways they're like over prescribing short term what it can do and maybe under prescribing long term what the transformational effect would be. Can you talk about how to educate a market that is so like drunk on this this concept of AI, but also doesn't understand it at the same time?
Yeah, look, and honestly, that's what we're spending weeks, months unpacking. And as a team, understanding that it is a very fragmented set of audiences that you have to start being real with, right? Because it isn't the simple answer. Yes, you can create an umbrella tagline, which we did, AI everywhere. What does that mean? AI in your network, AI on your laptop, AI in the enterprise. Great catchphrase, which everyone loves. But then the reality of, well, what does that mean? Right. And I think what we've been trying to do with some success, all right. So it's not, we experiment a lot. And I think we're finding a path to realize let's be very focused on the areas where we know we generate real value. So this thing will work, right? As opposed to the broad claim, AI saves everything, be very, very specific about what it can do because of what we have done, right? And bringing all of those experiences of the ecosystem with you, because it's not just Intel that delivers the outcome, it's the models that have been trained and are open source and now optimized on Intel silicon. It's the ISVs that are racing to get their new AI enabled thing to market on our silicon. How do we represent those and project those with the might of Intel to start to land those experiences and see them being used? Yeah. And it is a multifaceted journey. I mean, we have to maintain a connection to the developer community because this is a new technology, right? I mean, if I'm selfish as the CMO, do I want to hire developers to write bespoke code to develop premium customer oriented messages in real time? I'll wait for Marketo to introduce AI to their platform, but I'll be 2 years late if someone goes out there, hires 20 developers to go code something bespoke, right? But that's where the technology is at the moment, right? And so we need to connect to the developer community, convince them that we've got this software stack that enables you with all of these devices. Because that's the thing, like from a client perspective, tens of millions of AI PCs are out there. That's a huge opportunity for people, right? So recruit them, educate them, inspire them to bring those amazing ideas to market. And that's what I love about the power of Intel. We provide a framework and a set of resources that allow people to create things, right? New things, new experiences. And then I think it's our job in marketing to take all of that goodness of what they have done and project that back out to the market to celebrate what they've achieved for all of us. But then obviously also look after our own business, right? Because there's no point in having a Wi-Fi device if there's no Wi-Fi networks. The same, there's no point in having an AI PC unless there's AI experiences. So developer community is critical for us. And then stretching it into those other very, very specific use cases. Some people are really worried about pumping all of their data. 80% of enterprise data still sits on the enterprise. It doesn't sit in the cloud. And so if you want a chat bot or a digital assistant front end in your call center and all the knowledge and IP, yes, you can port all of that out to the cloud, but a lot of people don't want to do that. So how do you build an enterprise AI infrastructure where you can create those experiences in-house? And so you pick the use cases where you have products that excel that have been tried and tested, and you educate people that this option is available and we know it will work. Because that you hit the nail on the head, thanks to marketers. AI it's overblown, right? It creates issues for us just trying to look different in market. But I can only imagine what it's like on the other side, receiving this, right? I was sort of grateful for the American election because all the other advertising is drowned out for a while in some markets. But I think that's the opportunity for us. Be different. How do you be different? Be real.
Yeah, and as you look at that, Brett, it's interesting, it's exciting, it's complicated, right? Back to the giving you the sweats here. When you think of the use cases and the speed of development, I don't know. I mean, you've been in tech your entire career. I don't know if you've seen anything like this. When we talk about the acceleration of use cases changing so much, even in our business where we're thinking about content creation and scaling content and human insights with AI. It's this man plus machine or the human plus machine. And how you tell that story, how I told that story 3 weeks ago is different than today. So like when you think of that, is there comfort in what you described a moment ago, which is this framework of innovation is what Intel is versus a series of use cases? Like, how do you balance the speed and the pace of innovation when you're trying to go to market with a message that fully risks being outdated 3 weeks from now? So by the time you create it, you might as well toss it, right? Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, no. And look, honestly, great question. I think there are two plays that we have to and we are going to make. One, the framework that we provide enables you to go do these things. So that's a developer, ISV, SI sort of play. And also, we can't forget, large banks have hundreds of internal developers. So they have the capacity internal to create their own bespoke experiences. Yeah. So we need to embrace that community, and we are. But then when you're trying to project to an enterprise package, because everyone wants the package solution, I want to bring this in house and I need it to work in months, not in 3 years' time. And I think that's where some of the pushback or disillusionment is currently happening. I've bought this enormous capacity in the cloud. I've experimented for 2 years and it's not delivering anything yet. So we're caught in this world of people now being hesitant to invest unless they see an outcome. So I think that window of experimentation is quickly closing. Like, why would you spend tens of millions of dollars investing in infrastructure if no one has proved value yet, or there isn't a critical mass of success, right? So yes, work with the developers, continue that ecosystem of ingenuity. But then on the other side, we've got to start to counter the negativity around the concept of AI with proven value, right? And we have customers that do great work. It's generating real value for them. And it's just being aware, because to your point, it's all happening all over the place at the moment, and finding the diamond in the rough to wrap your marketing message around to then project to market is, I think, one of the toughest jobs, right? Because again, people are looking for the killer app, the killer package solution. It's not there yet, right? Nor was it on the iPhone. I mean, if you look at the mobile experience, probably that's the other parallel world. Yes, they had a device that was now mobile, but the explosion of apps now happening for everything is very similar to the world that we're operating in now in AI. And yes, we'll consolidate the use cases. Some will be acquired. They'll turn into a feature within an enterprise platform. To your point, we need to constantly monitor all of those happenings and adjust the message you're projecting around the concept as something that delivers, real value and it works. Yeah. And I love that. It's a thrilling exercise to be involved in, right? I was on a call with China only a couple of days ago with an ISV that is doing some amazing things with AI. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. But again, it's just, like you said, new things being presented to you every day. So any idea and set of messages you had 12 months ago needs to be constantly revisited, which is hard for marketing. You want to say something, say it again, so it lands. But the say it again now has addendums or refinements.
Oh, wait, what I just said, let me, and yes, and how's that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But that's the thrill of the industry at the moment, right? Yeah. So to me, it's an amazing place to be, but you have to tread with not necessarily with care. Don't be risk averse, but obviously tread with an idea of what you're trying to project and do it well.
Yeah, on another episode we had, I interviewed Raj, who's a professor at the Darden School at UVA. He also wrote a book called The AI Canvas, and it's how business can bring AI into organizations and what are the foundational principles. And one of the things I asked him was this time frame for value realization, and what he said kind of reinforces what you're saying here. He actually said, I don't think we'll realize the value of what's possible here for about 5 to 10 years, because you have to build the infrastructure, you have to organize your data, you have to have accessibility to the data, and then build apps on top of it. But there's this disconnect that you're describing, which is that we're in that hype cycle where people think like, oh my God, I can deploy AI and let go of, X amount of people and cut costs, when in reality it's you need to build this function up in order to realize that value. And if that value is not happening immediately, which is almost the false promise of AI, right? And if you can work with partners to create some short-term value while in parallel you're building this function in-house, like that's where the multiple on that investment's going to happen. But if people are getting frustrated short term because you're not getting the value in 30 days, which is where people are getting fatigued, it's almost a little crazy. And part of it is, to your point, marketing's fault, where we'll just AI this and you'll in 2 seconds your problems will be solved. This genie in a bottle doesn't exist, right? So I think, I'm curious if you feel the same way, if I've captured that appropriately. And then from a marketing standpoint, how does that change how you think about growing the market? Do you have to play a challenger role? Do you have to play an educator role? Like, how are you thinking about, putting those hats on or not?
No, I mean, again, a great question. I think, yes, I agree with the premise, right? And I think it's reflective of every major transformational that we have gone through as an industry in IT, like .com boom, right? And bust. It's similar. I mean, but the technology is, you know, different, obviously. But, .com was overinflated. Ultimately, was constrained by bandwidth, the cost of the internet, all of those types of things. And it was only years after, when networks and cost structures and bandwidth caught up to the promise, that we truly enjoyed an online lifestyle and set of experiences. AI is very similar. So I completely agree with that. I think the challenge for us in marketing is to maintain the hype, maybe not to the same volume, because you don't want people to lose faith in the promise, right? But you have to quickly pivot your message to be, AI delivers this for healthcare. AI delivers this for you as a consumer, right? Um, like some of the experimental work that I've seen around AI is, a laptop being, carried by a consumer where they can now interact with an AI avatar for mental health issues. In other words, the language model has been trained over months of consultations, anonymized, of course, between clients and their therapist, and being able to capture in real time someone talking to determine a signal of distress, of depression, of anxiety, and being a face to talk to in an environment where it's just hard to connect to mental health workers. Right? I mean, that's a very specific use case that AI can play an incredibly valuable role in a world of constraint of mental health support. And so I think uncovering those types of use cases and opportunities and being specific about the value that it can bring will just breathe new life. So it's not just the AI thing. It's look at this new thing we've been able to do for mental health, more access to more people that will just make it more real for people. Yeah. There was another one that I saw and again, someone highlighted it to me from our engineering team, where there was someone who actually used AI and trained AI to understand sign language. And so a deaf person could talk while up on the screen, what he was saying was coming up as text. So real time interpretation of um, sign language into text. And so there are definite use cases for this that are in their infancy and being made possible that we just need to uncover and breathe new life and excitement into the category.
Is part of your job then isolating short-term value, but reminding people the future has not yet been defined, right? So it's like, well, you may start to see some of these use cases, drawing parallels from those use cases to other potential use cases, and then projecting that out 3, 4, 5 years down the road to say, here's the future we're building. So you almost have to story tell about the future and demonstrate anecdotes about how we're on the path there. Is that part of the strategy when you think about thought leadership and content and how you're approaching markets?
Absolutely. And again, it just comes down to this. We have this amazing new technology that enables us to do a huge amount of things, but that huge amount of things has not yet been defined. This is the start of a very long journey for IT in general. So by painting the picture of what's possible today, inspires others to go do something as well, right? So you keep people involved and evolving that technology. So I love that, right? To be the inspiration to the industry about what the platforms that we deliver can enable now. And that's what Intel's power always was, right? I mean, it was always the PC delivered, right, at great expense in the first few years when they were made available. But look at what you could do. And not all use cases were defined for the PC in its first years of existing. It all came later, but the inspiration was always front foot. Look what Intel is enabling people to do. All right. But you bring up an important point. This time to value is a valid business need. All right. So, and again, in marketing, yes, I've got to paint the team, I've got to paint the picture of the future and Intel being a very big part of that future with what we do with the ecosystem. But you can deliver value today. And that comes down to the billings that you drive, the revenue that you drive, those more traditional but critical parts of a marketing function is to create the consumption of this silicon, right? And that's where I've charted the team, as we move into 25, outside of the AI everywhere umbrella message, what are those very specific, either horizontal or vertical use cases where enterprise can derive proven value today? And again, be that real value, voice in market. And that way we can track, all right, we did that series of activities, people engaged, we created a pipeline, it created the consumption of a device that we shipped into inventory into one of our partners. Yeah. So it's a real balance between those two roles.
It's interesting, right? Because now when you think of the application of technology horizontally and into a vertical, really what you have, your commerce point has to be thought leadership, right? So like what's going on in this industry that needs to change, and what is the technology that will help it change? What are we seeing short term, and now how do I apply that a similar story framework to another industry or another persona or another? Because even as we've seen innovation in general, you take something from one industry or category and apply it to another industry or category, it's not a new idea, but it feels new and novel. So starting to think of AI on those terms, and how do we start to almost like democratize results, just like we democratize compute and unlocked value. Until that happens with AI, the value is going to be unrealized, right? So the only way to do that is to become a leading voice in what's possible, how to use it, and obviously the tech and the products and the developers have to back that story up. I assume.
No, okay, you're spot on. You're absolutely spot on. Just being that presence because of Intel's A, ability to bring incredibly complex compute to market, satisfying the AI workload, and being seen to be that leader. Because that's the big challenge for us, right? NVIDIA is the big leader in the space. Right? I've got no bones about that. I celebrate their success, right? But it's also obviously a challenge to me. How does Intel insert itself as a challenger in that segment when now everyone perceives that that is the only answer? Um, so step up into that role about what is Intel in this space? Not only now, but where are we in 3 years' time, 4 years' time? So you're absolutely spot on. This balance between teasing the future and the bright future of Intel, but then counter that with what is on the truck today that is available to you, not only as a system that you can purchase from one of our partners, but a series of models that are being trained or applications that are being built and optimized with our engineering assistants to deliver value today in the enterprise. So it really is the balance of those two things. And then you add the complexity of consumer versus the commercial or business space, because
In the channel.
yeah, the channel on top of that. It's a huge Rubik's cube. And the only way we can solve it is by being focused, right? We can't be everything to everyone. And we really have to choose where will we win, um, and go double down our bets in that area.
How do you choose? Like when you're thinking of all those things, right? You're like, oh my God, there's so much. And I think as business people, we face that, right? Especially in when you introduce AI. You're like, my God, we can do anything. It's like, but the best businesses choose and are excellent at certain market segments or functions or industries or different buying personas and use cases. So like what is the calculus for you all when you're choosing what you want to be known for and great at?
In some instances, it's very simple. I'm a bit of a simple guy. I like being able to choose something because it makes the most obvious sense. And if you take that approach, the answer is simple, but then how you deploy that becomes the complexity because of the scale and the way that we operate as a business. So I'll tackle the two as a two-part question. For me, the focus just needs to be where, because I'm a business person, where is the maximum return to our shareholders? All right. And where are the competitive threats against that? And then make the decisions as to where marketing should spend its time. So I'll give you an answer. Like if we are heavily competed in a mainstream high volume space, is it better to have a pricing advantage and spend your margin that way? Or is it to spend marketing to encourage Intel as the best solution for a mainstream device? So to me, that's an easy decision to make, right? As a marketer, I'd much prefer to say to people, why are you bothering with a mainstream device when you should be investing more dollars to get an AI-enabled device that provides you with all these experiences? So my role in marketing is not to meet everyone by pulling the value of systems down. It's to actually lift the perceived value of the device for the consumer or the enterprise with their enterprise fleets. You need to spend more to get more out of it, right? So for me, that's the focus. I'm not here to chase the commodity. I'm here to prove the premium experience is something that you inspire by, that you're enticed by, and it's a must have. And I take the analogy out of the mobile phone world. Quite happy going out and spending $1,200 on a mobile phone, and yet you're expecting a PC for 500, right? I think we're in this really unique space where the gen on gen value of upgrades to mobile phones is just not there anymore. Okay, I get a camera that's a little bit better. Why spend money this year? I used to be an iPhone every year. I'd replace my iPhone. All right, I just did. $1,200 in Australia, it's even more because of the dollar fees. So I think there's this opportunity as a marketer. You look at it. Well, if everyone's not refreshing their phone every year, if they've got $1,200 in their pocket, then why wouldn't we want to insert ourselves into their mind as a consideration for that spend versus going to a Taylor Swift concert? All right. So I think those sort of focus decisions for me are very, very simple. So that's one of them. We want to play premium. We don't, as a marketer, let's spend our money convincing the world this is the new world, and you need to invest at a level that gets you access to those types of features. Yeah. The other one is internally when you get to the complexity of the business underneath. Sorry, the other one are the focus area. So it's premium, but it's also for business. To me, it's very, very simple. Intel enjoyed high penetration rates when people moved their data center off Big Tin and onto Linux, right? Because we were the only real player in that space. Now, obviously, we have our competitors in that space now. And so when you're up at the 95% penetration rate, it's easy to go down when competition comes in. And so the focus has to be for us to remind them why they went Intel in the first place, right? Because when you enjoy a market penetration where it's almost saturation point, you lose the muscle and interest to keep on marketing the reasons why, because you're enjoying the customer too much and the assumption that they won't change. So for me, it's a restatement publicly about the value of now you're refreshing your data center. Now you're refreshing your client fleet. The reasons why you chose Intel in the past have not changed, plus, plus, plus.
Yeah. I'd love to dig in there for a second, if I may. So, as a leader, how do you drive belief? So if you kind of rewind the clock, you had 90+% market share. You're the big dog on the block. You mentioned NVIDIA coming in now, and you're in a challenger position. You have a multi-year growth plan. You're having right sizing staff, and like for you, it's almost like you have to captain the ship, right? And how do I drive belief internally to my teams, share the vision to the market, to clients, to prospect? Like, how do you do that? And when you're not the leading voice anymore, but you're trying to climb that hill again, like, what are the tools that you deploy to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of them. One, a sense of optimism. And I think we were chatting earlier before we started. I'm an optimist at heart, right? And generally, that positive frame of mind comes across in the way that I lead the team, and I hope it diffuses down. Like it's not all darkness, right? It's okay to be a challenger. It's thrilling to be a challenger. So try to instill that type of ethos or mindset is key. So I think to inspire the team, you've got to be focused. So it comes back to what we were just talking about before. Make those decisions, and that's what you hold to, right? And be very clear about the reasons why we're going to go do this, and we're not going to do this, right? Um, so be very, very clear, and then build new connected tissues within the team to operate more effectively. We are in an environment where we literally, if I wound the clock back, and this is the other issue that Intel faced internally, a series of CMOs, because of the way the business was flowing, pivoted the marketing organization to be consumer oriented when we were all about drones. All right. And then they moved to this, then they moved to that. So this oscillation meant that I walked into an environment that had modes of working, connected tissues that were geared towards 50% of the business and not where the growth is, which is in commercial. Right. And so to inspire people, you need to educate them on the new game with a set and focused playbook, and how we're going to equip them not only with the infrastructure. So there's a lot of infrastructure modernization that we've got underway, because to be a successful marketer in a B2B world, you need technology, you need different approaches, you need all sorts of things. And that's my entire career background is in the B2B world. So bring the team along with this journey, and not at any time assume that they know how to do this well, and therefore bring the whole crew along, right? I'm not a huge fan of just throw out the skills that you no longer need and bring the skills that are proven in. I actually like to evolve a team and create agility within a team. Because I mean, you've brought it up several times. This world is dynamic; it's changing day to day, and I think as marketers, we really have to lose the belief that we'll ever settle into a mode of operating or a world that will stay static for a 12-month marketing planning period, right? And that's hard for people. I mean, I'm of an age where you used to stay in a job for 10 years, 12 years, 7 years, whatever it is. And I talk to Gen Zs, it's 18 months, 12 months. So even the ability to, as a leader, expect your talent to remain consistent as we move into the Gen Z as a big part of your workforce, they're not going to be there next year. They will move on because that's the dynamic in the work, the working area. So I feel like be focused, understand where your team is at, inspire them and equip them with the technology and the skills that they need for the new directions that you're taking. But it takes time. And I think that's my big frustration is that I can't move to the same speed that the market and our competitors are moving, right?
I think the concept of forced agility in marketing organizations is a healthy one. Not to mention another episode. There was the CMO and CRO of Calendly does what she calls creative destruction, which her team every quarter they do 80% new things. So they take what they were doing and said, build off of it. How do we test something
Wow.
new? How do we
Okay.
go? Yeah.
That's a
And
good
she also,
idea. It'll
it,
freak people out. So I can imagine
that's what
that's
I said. I'm like, my God, but like really diving in and saying like, guys, this world is moving fast and we either lead it or we get run over. Right. And so starting to think about a behavior style. And to your point, it's exciting. I mean, if you think of the role that Intel had played when, on the way up to that 95, 90% market share, market penetration, if at that same time you kept the challenger mindset, which you let dissolve, it's human nature, right? Like everyone gets comfortable. Like, why do we need to do that? Like, we're the leader. And there's lots of big brands that find themselves in those categories. And I would argue that's the most dangerous place you could possibly be, right?
I wouldn't want to be in media at the moment.
You got a target, right? You have a target and you don't realize it because you're comfortable, right? Because you're like, why do I need to hustle?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the opportunity, and I love how you're saying it's a skill it's a behavioral skill. I love that idea. I love that idea. I'm going to take that back to my leadership team and the team in general. It's new behaviors and new mindsets for everyone. Um, and I think the mechanic of us rolling out this transformational journey that we're on, I've been very explicit that I need to see if we're doing a consumer motion that is aligned to the consumer buying cycle. What's Intel's response to Black Friday? What's Intel's response to the holiday season, as opposed to what's Intel's response to a new product being launched? Right. In other words, align the marketing effort to the consumption outcome, not to what comes off the production line. Right. And map that process out for me so I know what a product marketer is doing, a digital marketer is doing, a content marketer is doing, a partner marketer is doing, and map that out. Remove the layers of decision makers. If there's an expert in a space, they are now the expert and the decision maker. And that's the work that we're currently doing. And I'm excited by it. And the team below us is excited because they just want to be empowered to do a phenomenal job. But sometimes it feels like walking through treacle because you attend 20 meetings, everyone's got an opinion, but they don't own the role. And just removing a lot of that noise that creates confusion, creates doubt in experts' minds as to, do I really have this skill? Everyone's attacking me on this call. Right? Remove that element so people can shine and display all the skills that we got them into the business for. It's exciting work.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a leader, if you can have clarity in communication, the vision, what you're building, and the role folks play in it, then you can take the lid off and say like, all right, you're crystal clear. You're the expert on this. You know where we're headed. The mission, we're all pulling the rope in the same direction. Now you can go do your thing, right? So starting to build that infrastructure so you can move fast, especially in an organization like yours where you have hundreds of people now, right? So it's like, how do I make sure we're all delivering the same goodness and it's not just individuals doing individual tasks, which can never overcome the hurdles that we need to in order to grow the business, especially long term. So I think that is smart. It's a leadership style that I think is required today in really any size organization. Like, and if you kind of flip that back to the point you just made, which is the turnover in employees and how short they stay, I'd argue that if employees were growing, they saw a future in their role in that company, they're empowered to build something, then they're not leaving, right? It's, part of the problem is you're maxed out, you're in some functional role, you're hitting a button every day and you're tired of hitting that button. And, and you're like, what role am I in? Like, what am I doing with my life? And the more tactical and less important I feel as part of a larger initiative, the more disconnected I'm going to be from my job, my role in the company.
No, I love that, Matty. I love it. And I think this is where we just have to realize that everyone is dopamine. And if they're not getting dopamine from their job, why would you keep scrolling inside? You know what I mean? I really feel, with that focus, like we're going to go create and prove the AI PC is your next purchase, not your phone. And if we can prove that we've achieved through marketing, great marketing with our partners, great messaging, which clearly details outside of the name, i.e., AI PC, this makes your life better or your job easier or your gaming more exciting, then we can look back on the numbers of the business and go, marketing was a huge player in that, not only for Intel, but for the industry. And that's the dopamine hit for me, right? Is that you made a difference.
In the way you make the difference is largely the stories you tell, right? It gets back to the history of human beings. Those who told the best stories led folks into some activity, and everybody was aligned. And I think at this moment, that's required. It's required to shape the market. It's required to get everybody on the same page in a hybrid work where people are working in their living rooms or offices or wherever, right? Like how are we all exactly? How are we all connected? And is the story of what I'm building and bringing to the market my story as well? Can I see myself in it? So this has been great. As we wrap, any advice you have for marketers that find themselves in a position like yours, where new products to market, competitors that are kind of never ending in large teams that they need to coordinate that maybe find themselves siloed, like what, if there's any advice you have to kind of close us out?
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of ones. I think the main one is be patient. Yes, there's a lot of change around us, but if you're grounded in your belief that we will be successful, then you just need to be patient that you'll get there. Now, it's up to you or your leaders to set the milestones to demonstrate real time success to those outcomes, but just be patient, I think, is number one, because this world is not going to change to be slower around us. So just be patient in understanding that it's going to do that. I think the other one too is for me, and this is where I've just been so lucky, all right, in my career, and it's just to take opportunities when they're given. All right. I mean, I've never really applied for a job. All right. It was a headhunter or it was an opportunity within the company that I had. Hey, Brett, I never touched Oracle before, but I go, hey, do you want to come do this? And I leapt at it. Right. Because in this world where marketing science is changing, technology is changing, the way that we actually do our work is changing, multiple opportunities are opening up, right, for marketers in this world. And when someone offers you the opportunity to go do something different, yeah, it may be challenging, Maybe it's not even a pay rise, but it's the opportunity to stretch the skills. Because that's really what my career has been. It hasn't always been about the money. It's just been the opportunity to understand, practice the various tactics that marketing has its power to change a consumer or an enterprise outcome. So yeah, and not only just accept the opportunities that are given, but if you see one, put your hand up. Put your hand up, right? Because quite frankly, leaders like me, I love it when people come to me with an idea that I haven't thought of and could really change the way that we do things. And I green light the project, or I find a place for the individual where they can make a difference. So yeah, I think take the opportunities as given, but seek the opportunities that are out there because there's just so many.
Yeah, I love that. That's your inner optimist shining through there, Brett. I mean, I think in this world that can feel overwhelming and confusing, and you're seeing a lot of doors closing, I think looking for the doors that are opening is a really smart idea. And how do we stretch our skills and grow ourselves and challenge ourselves and start to rethink things like leadership style in a dynamic environment and not getting comfortable if we're in a market share leadership position and know that, hey, there's somebody coming. We got to, stay vigilant and strong and leaning into new technology and processes and networking and things like that. So, Brett, loved this conversation, my friend. Thank you for the time.
It's a joy to be here, Dan. And I'm more than happy for you to come back in a year's time when we talk about what I did or didn't do.
I'm going to hold you accountable.
All right, totally. I'd love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and appreciate the time. Thank you for listening to Content Disrupted, brought to you by Skyward. To stay up to date on the latest ideas and insights in brand building and content marketing, visit our website at skyward.com. That's SKYWORD.com. Join us for our next episode, where we'll continue to challenge marketing norms and inspire you with fresh strategies for growing business through brand storytelling.